Welcome to the Real AI podcast. Now, I'm Sutopha. I have a PhD in biotech. I've spent 15 years in pharma and biotech and then started using AI to automate high volume data analytical workflows. I launched ActNow 360 to bring that same operational intelligence to businesses that want AI to actually do the manual work and not just talk about it. Now, today I want to talk about a problem that doesn't get enough airtime. We spend a lot of time talking about AI agents, what they can do, how fast they're improving, what industries they're going to change. But what we talk about much less is what those agents are actually reading. Because right now, most of the knowledge in most organizations lives in PDFs, web pages, formats which are built for human eyes. Um, but when AI reads knowledge, and if it reads it badly, it answers questions badly. Now that's not an AI problem; it's more of an infrastructure problem. Now my guest today has been working on exactly that gap. He spent 13 years in big tech, including Salesforce in San Francisco, built a thorough command of the full technical stack, and then walked away from it all because he couldn't stop thinking about a problem no one was really solving. He founded Nidal, an AI native knowledge management platform that makes enterprise content readable by AI agents and usable by humans at the same time. He's doing both. He's candid about where he is pre product market fit, still identifying the right customer, building in public. And that honestly is exactly why I wanted him on this show. Pramod, welcome to the Real AI podcast.
Yeah. Thanks for that great introduction, Suropa. I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. The pleasure is all entirely ours. Now, Pramod, let's start at the beginning. What's the origin story of Nidal and where did this actually start for you?
Right. So it all started when I was actually traveling in Yosemite and my car broke down, and I was forced to open the Glowbox user manual because there was absolutely no internet, and that manual was like useless at that point. I mean, in 21st century, reading long form text from a book, searching through the index and everything, it all felt like a dated experience for me. So that's when I started researching how can we deliver knowledge better for humans. So I initially set out to solve this human experience problem. Most of the world's knowledge is delivered through print, PDF, web pages, and static documents.
Mm-hmm.
I initially built a platform where it retained the important property of PDF and print, which is always availability. The beauty of book is that no matter where you take it, it delivers the content to you. Technology always relies on internet. So if you have to have the power of internet and technology, you'll have to give up the always availability power of book or PDFs. But enterprises, for delivering knowledge, that property is super important. So they started delivering all knowledge through PDFs. So
Mm-hmm.
I decided to build a platform where that property is retained. Users can open their applications, do search, access multimedia content anytime, anywhere, and get the content in their app. And if it is on automotives, they can simply ask a question and get answers. Even in the infotainment systems, it works. So after that, like in 2022, ChatGPT happened. So there was AI all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then we started doing research and see what we could do to make our content AI friendly and get good AI results. It turns out that whatever we had built in the past is like the first step to make things AI ready. If the content is API ready, that is the first step towards making content AI ready or AI native. Then we changed our messaging to AI native knowledge management platform, and we added all the features for making things AI friendly. So for AI to work really, really well, content should be easily discoverable, content
Yeah.
should be well structured, and
Mm-hmm.
the retrieval of knowledge should be very, very easy. So that is basically what we are building. Yeah, you asked me for how we started, but it became a long answer. But yeah, that's what we are doing.
No, that's great. That's a very it's a good comprehensive answer for what Nidal does and what are the strengths of Nidal as of now. So when you said that the platform was already API ready, that's not where most teams are. When a market shift happens. So was it a very intentional architecture, or did you get lucky?
It was an intentional architecture to solve the human experience problem
Hmm.
that we had before. Like PDF is really hard to read. I mean, I have not come across a single person who says, I enjoy reading PDFs. Nobody enjoys reading PDFs. And if you have to open PDF on your mobile device, it's
Yeah.
a real pain. I mean, it's a very frustrating experience.
Yep.
So, and if you have to have a technology where you have to deliver content in on any channel, it
Hmm.
has to be API ready. Basically, like all these applications, the way it works is it makes an API call, it gets the content, and it renders it to the UI.
Yeah.
So it was an intentional architecture for human experiences,
Okay.
and the biggest challenge in that experience was to build this um, delta synchronization layer, which can actually uh, download only the updates. So if you update your content from say A to B, or any client should only download the delta between the A and B. So that is B minus A should be the one that should be downloaded.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to download the entire content every time.
Mm-hmm.
So that delta synchronization problem was the hardest problem to solve.
Hmm.
So for that, we anyway had this API ready solution. We had a platform where you can put in any content,
Right.
and we don't just support text. We support multimedia rich content. We support bite sized video, bite sized audio, images, gifs, everything. So because like we live in a world where humans expect video visual responses. People don't have patience to read long form text anymore. If you have to learn about anything, you would rather watch a 30-second video or 30-second or listen to a 30-second podcast than read like 10 pages worth of content. Nobody likes to do that anymore. So we support multimedia rich content, and that has always been the case.
Mm-hmm.
And when AI happened, it actually, whatever we had built before that, helped us make it AI ready. In fact, like it was only about adding some higher level layers to make things AI ready. We did not have to do anything at the foundational level. I believe that we are heading to an era where 99.9% of the content would be consumed by LLMs and AI systems.
So.
Humans would be interacting with AI to get responses.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Occasionally, humans might directly go and consume the source content, um, but most of the time it will be through AI. AI will be consuming your content, and humans will be talking to AI. And our architecture supports this. So all the AI responses that we give are grounded in source. So whenever AI responds, um, so it will also have reference to the exact source. So user can actually click on that link and go to the source and explore the real content himself. People want to ask and get answers, or search and get answers, or watch videos. So we support all these things. But
Mm-hmm.
like back to your original question, uh, the API ready platform we had built played
Yeah.
really well for our AI native knowledge management platform. But I think like the world is still not ready to think that PDF is a technology that we should give up on for a lot of use cases. PDF as a technology is a great tool. It was built for a different purpose,
Yeah.
but PDF is not the way you want to deliver knowledge. Static docs is not the way you want to deliver knowledge.
Mm.
You want to build it in a way where you can have live assistance on it,
Yeah.
and our platform enables that.
Mm. So now when you say about the PDFs, what you just talked about, like the static PDFs, that's not what we need right now. So when you say, so in a way, you're saying that the industry is still not acknowledging this. Do you think is it more like a willful blindness, or does the problem genuinely not show up until you're deep inside it, like what you did, what you thought about in Nidal? Think.
Yeah, I think like a lot of people still think that PDF is enough. So some people say you can simply upload that PDF to AI and get answers. What if you update the PDF? What if you want to actually go to some specific block in a PDF? What if you have to search it yourself?
Right.
But I think there are a lot of people who understand that there are serious limitations when it comes to PDF. That's why there is this huge movement going on where we have this document intelligence platforms. I hope I get it right. What it does is basically you give a PDF and it converts everything to Markdown and it gives the content in Markdown, and then you use that Markdown content to feed to AI,
Mm-hmm.
and then you get better responses from AI.
Mm.
At least even if you don't get better responses, AI is relieved from doing that pre-processing, extracting data, and all
Right.
those things.
Mhm.
Because even these document intelligence platform, even those have limitations. It is not a foolproof transformation going from PDF to Markdown. It's not a foolproof solution. You need a human in the loop to make sure the transform content is good.
Yeah.
So
Nothing.
and once you have it, once you have it, you should probably give up on PDF and use some other platform like Nidal to actually create and update content and deliver it to your user base, whoever it is. It could be your staff, it could be your customers, or it could
Mhm.
be anyone. But
Yes. Yes.
industries. There are people who recognize this problem.
Mhm.
There, one of the things that is happening is people have accepted the world as it is today. So, given everything that is there, what can I do to make AI effective?
Sure.
We are asking a foundational question saying we should actually give up on this technology and move to a new way of creating content and saving content. I mean, the way I think about it, we need to do two things. One is make sure every piece of content that is created is AI ready, and transform every piece of content that has already been created to AI ready. Basically, clean up the internet and make it AI ready,
Well,
and create new content which is AI ready from the word go.
that's a very interesting part what you just said, because what I'm thinking is, so say when an enterprise, it has already a decades of documentation which is already in PDF form. What will the migration path look like for them? Is it just going to be a rip and replace, or can they actually bring in things gradually in here?
Yeah, I mean,
What?
obviously, it has to be done gradually. Some of the
Yeah.
most used or frequently used content should be transformed first to give
Mm.
great experiences for current
Mhm.
usages, and slowly you transform the old ones.
Oh.
Uh, because like if you have to have AI make use of AI read all those old documents or decades worth of documents, as you say, it has to be made AI ready. You have to have some kind of pipeline or move it to a platform where things are AI ready.
Mm-hmm.
And um, yeah, so it's a gradual process. Um, at the same time, they should make sure that the new content is created in a way which AI can directly consume. It has to be AI native or AI ready from the moment you create it. So you don't want to keep following the previous way of doing things and keep cleaning up. It's like mopping the floor with your tabs on. You don't want to do that. If you want to mop the floor, first close the tab. Make sure you create new content in an AI ready fashion,
Mm.
and then mop the floor. That is basically make existing content AI ready. So that's how I describe it. Yeah.
Okay. No, I can see that you have a very holistic approach of getting into things, which I'm very curious to know. Is it because your career has been from being a generalist, like you have a hardware close, then research, then backend, that full stack view make this problem more obvious to you than it would have been to someone who had stayed in one lane probably? Because you have
Could
thought
be.
of things which are like not everyone would think about. I just want to know your thought process here.
I definitely think that my past experiences in the industry has helped me. I started as a DSP engineer. I was working at the embedded systems layer. Then I did research. My research was in augmented reality.
Mm-hmm.
So even my master's courses were in machine learning, computer vision, 3D vision, things like that. And then I became a application engineer, and then I became a backend engineer. So I think of myself as a very much a data person.
Mm-hmm.
But working at the application layer helped me think from a user experience perspective. And the problem that I'm solving needs both the data component and the experience component. Um, I think it definitely did help.
Yeah, I can totally see that. And you talk a lot about, about the human experience. You have been mentioning about the human experience a lot. And I want to spend a little moment on it because, there's a version of the story, what you're saying, that is purely a technical infrastructure play, right? Keep coming back to the human side. Now, what kind of experience are you actually trying to create here with Nidal?
We say it is human experience friendly or human first experience. So it can be anything because we are an offline first platform. When you open an app on your mobile device or on your tablet or on your system, whether you are flying in an aeroplane or in a submarine or flying in a spaceship outside the planet, you should simply be able to click and get answers. So that instant seamless experience is, in my opinion, it is super important. I think like uh, you learn best when you are focused and passionate. And when
Mm.
you are focused and passionate, if the content is not readily available, you lose focus. And
Mm.
by the time content loads, you wouldn't stay passionate, and the effectiveness of learning goes down. That instant and seamless experience is like, I think it for humans is super important. And that is one of the like insights that Nidal brings.
Yeah.
And the other experience that I talk about is like
Mhm.
humans, like moving forward, the experience that you would expect is you just want to ask, or you want to find, or you
Mm.
want to watch, one of the three. You
Yeah.
want to ask an AI assistant, or you want to just do a search and find something, or you want to watch a video or listen to an audio. So that
Mm.
is the experience we are going towards. And I
Mm.
think like the whole computing architecture is being reinvented now. We are going through a revolution.
Mm.
And when that happens, you will have local models running on your mobile devices or on your laptops. And if the knowledge is all readily available on any device, you can privately talk to AI with that content and get instant answers.
Mhm.
Uh, this is very important for learning or education in general. I mean,
Yes.
that's one of the reasons why you see uh, this download option in most of these education platforms. Like whether you go to Udemy or lynda.com, which is linkedin.com,
Yeah.
or Coursera or Pluralsight, they always give an option to download. That is because knowledge, by nature of what it is, it doesn't change frequently. And if it doesn't change frequently, what's the point in going to the internet every time and downloading it, right? If
Mm.
something is important for you, it should be readily available for you.
Mm.
Um, so so I think like that's what I mean when I say human experiences. It has to be instant and seamless.
Yeah.
The ask, find, and watch experience should be seamless.
Uh-huh.
Um, and it should be available on any device, anytime, anywhere.
Mm. Yeah, no, I can totally see your view because, I think we have touched upon a little bit in the pre-podcast chat as well that, when you say that it should be your platform is for humans and by humans, right? I think you mentioned that. So it totally makes sense because AI was built for humans, so it should serve humans. This is like one of the most clear examples what you're just showing. Now, I'm going to come a little bit on the, the PDF part. Now, I'm a scientist. I learn PDFs. For me, a PDF is again isn't just about text. You talked about, that okay, it can read, it can read pixelated images. Like for me, it's again charts, it's bar graphs, it's images, visual data. How does Nidal handle that? And what does your assistant do with the figure which is not just text?
Right. Yeah, this is a fantastic question. Um, so we want to do multimodal AI. So because we support all types of multimedia content, one
Yeah.
of the things we want to do is to have multimedia captioning. So we want to have an AI understanding of your images on videos, and we also want to have transcripts of audio and video. and give that information to our AI assistants to give you responses. So assume that you have this bar graph which talks
Mm,
about something about your research.
mm,
Uh, the way it's going to work is like when you put that image on our platform, like AI will try to understand the bar graph, and it will have a summary or a description of what it is,
mm.
and that will be stored as metadata for that particular image. And
Okay.
when there is an AI assistant, we give that as uh, one of the content for that. So it uses it just like the text, but it knows that it is an image. It knows that uh, it is the description of an image, and if it wants to use that image as the response, it can simply render.
Okay. So it's pretty much using the figure legend, what we call, right? The bar legends, which we provide, say for a figure 5, this is what it describes. That's the information it's picking up from the
Could be,
eyes.
yeah. That could be one of the things that it would have. But
Okay.
it will also try to understand the image in an absolute sense. It's not just that figure 5 is being referred to here to this
Yes.
particular image. So it will also try to understand what's in an image. If there is a cat which is jumping, it will say there is a jumping cat in the picture. And if you search for, do you have any images for jumping cats, it would obviously return that.
Okay.
Yeah, similarly for audio and video, we want to give the audio transcript as metadata for AI, and
Mhm.
uh, for video as well. There is both transcript of the video and also the video understanding. So those
Okay.
tools are not very mature at the moment, like video understanding, those
Sure.
things.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, but that's the vision. We want to do multimodal AI.
Okay. That's amazing. You have talked about your AI assistant doing what you were describing is pretty much it can do a lot of semantic searches, right? So, for someone who doesn't know what that means, how does it change what an AI agent can find? Because it can do semantic searches.
I think semantic search is extremely important for AI agents.
Yeah.
The way AI agents work, as I understand it, is that if you ask a question, it will come up with some search item, search words, or some queries, and it
Mhm.
will use that query to search a particular piece of knowledge and get some blocks of content, which it uses as tokens for context,
Mhm.
and it takes actions on that particular context. So
Mhm.
semantic search is super critical along with discoverability and knowledge retrieval. So the way we do for AI agents is um, when an AI agent brings an API, we present the whole content map that is available. So if you have, say, 50 knowledge modules, it will know the summary of all these 50 knowledge modules in the first pane. And once it has that information, it will decide which particular information it wants to drill down into, and then it chooses that and it does semantic search on that piece of module or content. And at every stage it will know the size of the context. It never has to do give me all this content. It
Mhm.
can, even before doing it, it will have a knowledge of how much of token size it would need to set a particular context,
Mhm.
and then it will decide whether to use that or to drill down further and or select granular piece of information. So
Mhm.
we support like fetching content at block level. So you can even get a paragraph level content or even heading level content. So AI can say, give me all the content under this heading or under this section or under this particular module, and we give everything. And it can also say, I just need the summary for this particular module or this particular section. We can do that. And once it uses the summary, which is like a condensed information, which is token efficient. Once
Mhm.
it decides that a particular piece of section is the right one, it can get the full detailed section and then use it for giving you high quality responses.
Okay. Now that's a clear and a very comprehensive answer for what actually why most AI agents need to do semantic searches than just do finding the keywords and retrieving the information. I think that's a very very vital point on people how they need to understand what an AI agent is capable of.
Right, right.
Now I want to talk about your the team behind Nidal. So, how you actually like build Nidal? Because what you described to me, in the pre-podcast chat is that, uh, your team has completely stopped writing code by hand, right?
Right.
That's what you're.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
walk me through what that actually looks like day to day, like what you're doing in Nidal day to day.
Right. So we use Claude or Codex to write most of our code. And
Mm-hmm.
our job is to make sure proper test cases are written. I'm very paranoid about tests. So for every piece of logic that an AI writes, it has to write a test that I manually verify. I have to read the test case and make sure it is right. And that's what my engineers do as well. So my backend engineer, like he first writes the test and then he writes the code. So this is how test driven development works. You first write the test and then write the code and then run tests to make sure the logic works fine.
Mm-hmm.
And even tests are written by AI. I am there to make sure what AI is doing is complete and maintainable for me. I mean, nobody can. So, one of the principles we have in our company is nobody can make AI accountable. You are free to use AI, but ultimately you are accountable. If anything goes wrong, AI did not make the mistake. You made the mistake. So, and like the scope of what every engineer can do is much more than what it was before November 2025. Now, like because AI is doing all your coding, a person
Mm-hmm.
is expected to build features fast. They're expected to build more features. They're expected to take ownership of bigger projects. And like even my designer, he whenever he designs something, he also builds it himself using Claude. And if I'm happy with the client side development, I just publish it. And so for some of the basic things at the client level or in the website things, I let my designers build using AI and publish as well.
Okay. Now, you said that you review the tests and basically not the code here, but for someone who has always thought about quality in terms of code review, can you say more about why that shift matters? Like, why wouldn't you just look into the code but actually review it based on the tests?
If you want to make your engineering job or development job easy, you have to have tests. Otherwise, there is no way for a human to test every cases manually.
Mm-hmm.
The shift is only in how things are being done. I mean, even though I don't uh, verify, I don't manually check the code written by AI. I do check the architecture and all the abstractions.
Yeah.
I want to make sure the abstractions that AI uses is something that a human can make sense of.
Mm-hmm.
And also architecturally and structurally, it should make sense. It should be maintainable and scalable.
Mm-hmm.
If it creates a complex piece of code base, it will be very hard for anyone to understand, and it'll be hard for AI itself to build on top of. So I don't review the detailed logic, but I
Yeah.
do verify the higher level abstractions. Test driven development is how things engineering should always be done,
Mm-hmm.
and AI is helping me do it because I was never fond of writing tests. I I knew that it is one of the most valuable things an engineer should do,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a very frustrating part of the job. AI is helping me out because I don't have to write it. AI will write it for me. I just have to make sure it is writing the right tests.
Right. So, with that capability, do you think like how how do you evaluate? Like, say, you have this back-end engineering background, like whether an AI agent has actually understood the product vision versus just the product code that compiles. Is there a tell? Can you actually make out?
It is very easy for me to make out because I have a deep insight on what is being built.
Mm.
It might be difficult for somebody who I hire to make sure that it is doing the right thing, but for me, it's pretty easy because I have clear vision in my mind, and I can ask a few questions. Um, and if I close a session, I'll have to restart it, and I'll have to bring it back up to the state where it'll be useful. It's not that once I start a session, it'll be immediately useful. I'll have to teach it. I'll have to give the right set of context. I'll have to train it properly. I mean, training is probably the wrong term, but I'll have to bring it to a state where it is useful. Um, and if you have a code base, AI will just go and check the code base and try to understand it. Sometimes it does very, very wrong things. So that's when I know I need to steer it again. I need to go back and address it at the foundational level. So I'll either kill the session or try to steer it in that same session. So that's how I have been doing it.
Okay. So that clearly shows, how your experience, and you basically you have got your hands dirty with the actual work. So now what is working, and what is a tell for an AI agent, if it's doing the right thing or is it just hallucinating at that point. So that's a clear tell for you.
Even before AI was there, we had 100% test coverage. So any changes we make, I just have to run the test suite for like 20 to 30 seconds and it will tell me if anything is going wrong, has
Right.
gone wrong, or is going wrong. So that confidence is very critical for building a high quality platform. And that's what we have been doing.
Right. So it strongly shows that NIDL, the infrastructure is really solid here. So now I'm going to shift my gears a little bit and now talk about the product, the product market fit here. So you have a platform that works, the infrastructure is solid, but the right customer, so the one who makes me say, this is exactly who this was built for, is still, I think, coming into focus. What does that search actually feel like from the inside?
Yeah, I mean, that search is pretty hard. I think most entrepreneurs would agree with me. That is probably the hardest thing. Our ideal customers are automotives because automotives deliver knowledge all over the place, whether you open their website or you open their mobile device or you are driving a car. And there are not many platforms where you can put knowledge in one place and deliver knowledge in all these channels. Even in your infotainment system, you should simply be able to click on something or ask something over voice and get responses. And we enable all these types of experiences. We are an omni-channel platform. That's what we say. We are an omni-channel platform where knowledge could be delivered on any channels. That said, knowledge is everywhere. I mean, even if you are a fintech company or a tech company, you have your knowledge bases, you have your troubleshooting guides, you have your FAQs, help centers, and everything. We can build help centers too. Our solution is a horizontal solution. We want everybody, every industry, people to use our platform for all knowledge use cases. I mean, we are not ready to solve for all knowledge use cases. That's a disclaimer. And but still, we aspire to do that, and we aspire to ultimately be an education technology company. When you hear the word education technology, you think of academia. So we want every human to come to our platform to learn anything. You want to learn about, say, quantum physics, you should simply open one of our apps or one of our solutions and get answers. And if you want to, say, clean up your freezer in your refrigerator, right now, if you want to do that, it's a very hard thing. I mean, honestly, like, you would not have access to their manuals anymore. You would have trashed it, and you will have to do a treasure hunt by going to their website and downloading the PDF and all those things. Ultimately, what you might end up doing is you might go to YouTube, watch some random videos, and hope it would work. Imagine an experience where you just click a button and ask a question and get answers from the creator of the product themselves. That is the most credible answer you can find. And so we want to be a solution for all knowledge consumption use cases. One of our mission statements is to help the world learn. We want everybody to use our platform to learn about anything and everything.
Right. But the platform, by design, I think it definitely sounds that it can handle any, I'm using the word any here, but enterprise knowledge here. So is the problem, do you think, is the problem that the customer doesn't know they have this problem yet, or that they know the problem but don't recognize NIDL as the solution?
I think it's option 2. I think it's option 2. I think like coming up with the right solution is also not easy. Some people recognize parts of the problem. Some
Yeah.
people simply say PDF is not helping my AI pipelines. If you only take that narrow problem and solve it, the solution would look completely different.
Well.
And some people say we are delivering this content through PDF. Users want videos. Let's publish YouTube videos is the solution.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, these are all connected problems. The core problem is the way we are storing knowledge. Knowledge is being stored through static docs. It's all locked. It's all trapped for AI. And even for humans, it's bad because humans don't enjoy reading static docs. So the core problem is for the world to move away from this to something else. So I think I would say it's option 2 for me.
Okay. Yeah, again, I wanted to address this sometime back also. Like, I want to know about, again, about the name, the Nidal name, because it's one of those names that sound simple, but it isn't. So, Nidal, what does it mean?
Right. So Nidal means originating point of knowledge, where knowledge begins. So Nidal comes from the Latin word nidus, Nidus. So nidus means the focal point or the originating point. The adjectival form of nidus is nidal, Nidal, and K for knowledge, which is a homonym. So K is silent here, which is pronounced as nidal.
That's very cool because that's a name that takes some conviction to carry, right? It doesn't explain itself, right?
Yeah, right.
Was that intentional? Because do you want people to ask like what it means? Is that
No, I mean I would ideally like to be in a state where people already know about Nidal. I don't want to be in a situation where I should explain it. But until people understand it, I would tirelessly explain what it is.
Well, I can totally get that. Yeah, Pramod, I think this has been a very, very interesting and I think technically interesting conversation I've had on this show. The way you have described the knowledge infrastructure problem, which is real, it's invisible to most people, and you have been working on it longer and I think more seriously than almost anyone I've spoken to. So, for anyone listening who works in an organization, with years of, say, content logged in PDFs, or who is deploying AI agents and hitting a wall on, what those agents can actually read, where should they go to find you and find Nidal?
Yeah, they can reach out to me at pramod@nidal.com, and they can reach out to me on LinkedIn too. I watch LinkedIn and I'm available there.
Okay, awesome. So I will put all those in the show notes. And for our listeners, if this episode opened up a question about your own knowledge infrastructure, where your AI agents are actually reading from and whether that content is ready for them, that's exactly the kind of conversation worth having. So links will be provided in the show notes. Pramod, thank you for being on the Real AI podcast. It was a pleasure.
Thanks for having me, Sutauba.
Thank you.